All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome today to our author interview. Today we're here with Jessica Levitt, who has written Sally's Magical Horse, which is available on our website, Red Clover Reader. This is Maria, and this is Red Clover Reader, which is an online database for children's literature that is value-based and value-based and diverse and focus-driven. So today we're here with Jessica Levitt. Thank you for joining us today, Jessica.
Oh, my pleasure.
So Jessica has written Sally's Magical Horse. We'll get in a little bit more talking about it today, but the gist of it is that Sally is a medically fragile child, and she lives on a farm. And through her going to a farm fair, she discovers a friend, and we'll get talking about her journey with this friend and how it ends up really changing her life. But this book is all about perseverance and determination despite what medical differences people might have. So can you just introduce yourself a little bit for us, Jessica, and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, my name is Jessica, and right now I work with children in a cancer hospital in the city, and I've worked in a lot of hospitals with typical kids and medically fragile children. Basically, the book that Sally is based on is a little girl I used to work with really closely at a facility with medically fragile children. She had a trach and feeding tube, and she had a harness, and she was in a wheelchair. And basically, she's very bright and very smart. And basically we had a really special relationship. And so the book is based on her. And basically the therapeutic horseback riding, I've also have volunteered at therapeutic horseback riding in the city outside of the city area. And so basically I wanted to have two true events and put it into a children's book for children who have medical issues and who have disabilities, and for also typical children, because I think that it's very important to for typical children to see oh well that the child who has like a medical difference or a disability can is still a friend, even though they might have some medical issues. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really interesting and cool inspiration behind Sally and her story. So kind of going a little bit deeper, could you tell us a little bit more about the main character? And obviously, like, she's based off of someone that you interacted with. So could you tell us a little bit deeper about that?
Yeah. Well, basically, this little girl that I worked so close with at the Medically Fragile Center she was very bright, and basically she would say, like, when she just met you, she would say, "I like Jessica." And basically, like, she liked everything, and basically, like, when you would play with her, she would say, "I like this game." So basically that's why I had Sally say that in the book. And basically she she was she was only like, basically she went to a special needs school at the medically fragile facility, and they said she was only one grade level behind. So she was very, very smart, and she knew what was going on, and she knew like a lot of the caregivers' names and stuff. And basically you couldn't let anything go past her, because she would she would pick up on it, and basically, if she had something to say about it, she would say it, and and she would have an iPad. And so basically, she would, maneuver the iPad, and basically the iPad would talk to her, and she would talk back to it. And basically she was able to find, like lesson plans on it and stuff. And it was a way of her of communicating.
Yeah. You can definitely tell that correlation because when I was reading it, I'm like, you can tell she's very passionate,
Yeah,
optimistic
she's very
child. Yeah.
passionate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so cool that that reflects in your
yeah,
magical
yeah,
book.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So kind of going a little bit deeper about yourself,
yeah.
when did you start writing and how did you get into that?
Well, basically, I started writing basically like a couple of years ago. I started, when I was, working with this medically fragile little girl, and when I was doing therapeutic horseback riding. One day I was actually in California visiting my relatives, and we were walking along the beach, and all of a sudden, this story just connects into my head to write a story about this little girl and therapeutic horseback riding. And I just got very excited about it, and I told my family about it, and they said, oh, this is fantastic, you have to write it. And then I like knew, like, what exactly I was gonna write about it, like, say, like in the story, and how she meets up with a horse, which becomes her friend. And it just clicked, and it all happened by walking along the beach.
Yeah, that's interesting how these ideas come
Yeah,
into
yeah,
someone's head. Wow.
yeah,
So what made you decide to make it a children's book and children's literature and specifically that you got involved in?
yeah. Well, basically, I have a very special place in my heart for children with disabilities and medical needs, because I have dyslexia. So on some level, I know what a special need child might be going through, even though I don't have their same difficulty. I still, I basically, I treasure what they're able to do and what they're able to share, for, like in a classroom setting, or, in a medically fragile setting. And basically, I feel that it's very important for, typical children and their families to realize, oh, well, this child was born this way, but it doesn't mean that they're going to catch what the child has, and that's why I had a medical glossary in the back, because I wanted, typical children to realize that this is something that they were born with, and that, that they definitely, need friends, and they need continuity, just like a typical child, and they need to be, treated the same way as a typical child, even though they might have a learning difference or a medical need.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely, so kind of touching, you already touched on it, but who is your ideal reader for this book if you were to have one?
An idea reader, like an age range.
Yeah, or maybe just like a demographic, I guess.
Okay, okay. Well, basically, the age range that I would consider for this book would probably be like a young age, like maybe like 5 to 6 year olds, or even 4 year olds, because once typical children, turn 4 and 5, they start noticing stuff, like if they have a child who has like autism or Down syndrome in their kindergarten class, they start noticing it, and they start asking questions like, why can't, I'm just gonna, make up a name here, why can't Ben, swing as fast as I can, or why can't they, spell the word cat like I can, and so they start asking, and they get curious, so I think Sally's Magical Horse would be an appropriate book for them to read, and to look with their families, so that they, learn, oh, this is why, Sally needs a trach, or this is why she needs a feeding tube, or this is why she's in a wheelchair, because they get curious, and they ask, a lot of questions. And it's good to be, upfront, and tell them, this is why this child is disabled or has a medical issue. Just be open about them, but give them a short answer that's not too long, but enough that they can understand it, because even though they're 5 or 4, they're still young, so you want to come up with an answer, but you want it to come up in a simple way so that they would understand.
Yeah, and so that's perfect. Then they can read
Yeah,
this book, and it gives them a clearer understanding of
right,
what
right.
these differences are. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so kind of about yourself. What do you do in your free time, and
Well,
what else do
I
you
go
love?
to movies and hang out with friends, go to art museums. I take an art class down
Okay.
on West 23rd Street. And basically I take walks to Central Park and, basically I take as much advantage of the city as I can with my free time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if someone was reading on our website and they were looking through the books and they stumbled upon Sally's Magical Horse, what would you say to them? What is your pitch, your one-line pitch to them to get them to read your book?
Well, basically, I would say that Sally's Magical Horse is a really good book to read, and that it will not only will you learn from it, but you'll also be inspired by by Sally's triumphs and what she overcomes and how her family helps her overcome to be able to do therapeutic horseback riding.
Yeah, I think that would get me to read it. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Um, so what else? What other tips or kind of advice do you have for parents or children that are in today's world, and whether it's dealing with medically fragile children or other areas of life? What kind of tips and advice do you have for them?
Yeah. Well, the tip that I have is that, of course, enjoy reading Sally's Magical Horse with your child, and definitely take the cue from your child on what they're interested in Sally's Magical Horse. So like if they come up with a question, why does Sally have to have a trach? Well, the parent or a caregiver could say, well, Sally needs a trach so that she can breathe better. Um, and if they ask, well, why does she need a feeding tube? They can say, well, the reason why she needs a feeding tube is because she can't eat through mouth. And then the parent could say to their child, you know how you eat, lunch and dinner through mouth, but for a medically fragile child, they get their dinner and lunch and breakfast through their feeding tube. Like, for example, I'll use the little girl at the medically fragile facility that I worked with. She asked me one time, what is dinner? And I said to her, well, you know how you get your food, your breakfast and lunch and dinner through your feeding tube, but typical children eat dinner through their mouth. And she went, oh, she never knew what dinner was because she didn't realize that she gets her dinner through the feeding tube and not by mouth. So she didn't realize what dinner was until I explained to her that she gets it through her feeding tube.
Yeah, wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy. You don't really think about those types of things
yeah,
until you're
yeah, yeah,
exposed to it. That's so interesting.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so do you have anything else with us today that you would like to share, or anything else you would like to talk about on our interview today?
Well, basically, I just want to get the book out there, and I want families and children, whether they have special needs or typical, I just want them to be inspired, and I want to open their horizon on children who have difficulties, or who are typical, and I just want to inspire them and to nurture their creativity and to inspire them.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I think definitely if people read the book,
Yeah,
no matter what age you are. I mean, I read it, and no matter if you have a child or not, it really does open your eyes, and it's a
yeah,
great read. So I would definitely recommend Sally's Magical Horse to anyone that's interested. So thank you so much for joining us today,
you're
Jessica.
welcome. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it too. Thank you so much for
You're
watching,
welcome.
everybody.
Thank
This is Jessica Levitt with Sally's Magical Horse, and this is Maria with Red Clover Reader, and we are an online children's literature database with value-based literature and diverse literature, so definitely check out Sally's Magical Horse and the other things we have, and thank you for watching.
Thank you, Maria.